meeting please come to order? A quorum of 175 is present. With your, and actually we're at 190, so thank you for all coming out. With your permission, we will waive the reading of the constable's return of the warrant. Welcome to Dover's 2025 special town meeting. First, a few preliminaries. The fire chief reminds us that there is no smoking in the building and no sitting in the aisles or on the stairs. Please turn the ringers of your cell phones off. Non-voters and non-residents are welcome to attend our town meeting, but they should be seated in the area directly in front of me or in the designated area in the cafeteria. Our guests tonight include our state representative, Josh Tarski. Thank you, Representative Tarski, for your service to Dover, and we wish you well as you proceed to new endeavors. Thank you. Some introductions. I'm Jim Rapetti, the moderator for the town of Dover, and in that role I will oversee tonight's proceedings. On my immediate right, I will now call names, and please raise your hand as I call your name. We have Nina Pickering Cook, our town council, Melissa Santucci-Rossi, our town planner, Carol Lisbon, chair of the planning board, Jody Hsu, vice chair of the planning board, Michael Blanchard, town administrator, Kate Canny, our assistant town moderator, and Felicia Hoffman, our town clerk. Further over, we have the chair of the Board of Selectmen, Robin Hunter, member of the Board of Selectmen, David Havlin, and member Cam Hudson. We also have members of the Warrant Committee, the chair, Woody Weiss, and Simone Acevedo, the vice chair. In the front, on the first row, we have the remainder of the Warrant Committee. Kevin Bauman, please raise your hand. Micheline Boudreau, Nina Green, Martin Howard, Sarah Cadena Kenny, Gavin Koo, and Dick Malcolm. Thank you for your service. A few words of procedure and tradition. If you wish to address the group tonight, you must be recognized by me before speaking. You will note that there are 3 microphones in the front of the stage, at the end of each aisle and in the middle. One microphone is marked yes and is for those wishing to speak in support of the article. The microphone marked no is for those wishing to speak in opposition to the article, and the middle microphone is for those who have questions or wish to move the question. If you wish to speak, please proceed to one of the microphones and I will alternate among the 3 microphones. In addition, I appreciate that some of you may not be able to stand in line. If you are unable to stand in line, please raise your hand if you wish to address town meeting on a particular matter. I will alternate between those standing in line and those who remain seated in proportion to the relative numbers of each. After you are recognized, please identify yourself as well as your street address and speak directly into the microphone. The power switch will already be on. It is important to remember that brevity is the soul of wit. I would like to remind all our speakers tonight that the longer and more complex your presentation, the greater the chance you will confuse rather than persuade. To save time and allow as many people an opportunity to speak, we'll limit comments to the floor to 3 minutes. Please try to limit your remarks to new facts and new perspectives. Repeating what has already been said is unlikely to help your case and may in fact hurt as people are anxious to vote on the question. Our assistant town moderator, Kate Canny, will ring a bell on the stage when you have 30 seconds left and twice when your 3 minutes has expired. Limiting comments to 3 minutes will give everybody an opportunity to speak. If you have a question, please direct the question to me so that I can refer it to the appropriate person. The answer to the question will be included within your 3 minutes. So if you have more than one question, you might want to state both of them or all 3 of them before we proceed to answer the questions. A couple of other points about our procedure. Regardless of how we vote tonight, the matter can be brought up for reconsideration up to the point that the town meeting is adjourned. Be sure to stay until the end of the meeting. Otherwise, the outcome for the article might be changed. And for those of you who have been in town for a while, we have seen votes change when a motion came up for reconsideration. So please stay until the meeting is adjourned. Also, sometimes a citizen will tire of the discussion and make a motion to move the question. If such a motion is made and seconded, we must move immediately to a vote on the main motion, or on the motion to move the question. All discussions and action on the article is suspended until the motion to move the question is acted upon. If the motion to move the question passes, we then proceed directly to vote on the main motion without any further discussion. The code of conduct for the tradition of town meeting in Dover has been refined over 189 years. Too many rules in our town meeting will become a game only lawyers can play. Too loose and it will become anarchy. And a further word about democracy and conduct. Disagreement is the very essence of democracy. It would be a very boring town meeting if we agreed about everything. But it is imperative that we disagree without being disagreeable. Let us honor the memory of all those who sacrificed to give us this great gift of democracy by conducting ourselves in a professional and collegial manner. Emotional outbursts and accusations directed to individuals or groups have no place, and they dishonor the memory of those who sacrificed to give us this great gift of democracy. Before we proceed to the articles of the warrant, would you please join me in expressing our thanks to the scores of elected and appointed volunteers who compromise our town government, as well as the able employees who ensure the smooth running of the town. Thank you for your volunteer work. As I mentioned, democracy is a wonderful prize that has been preserved through the sacrifice and efforts of millions of our citizens. Let us take a moment to silently recognize those who are putting themselves in harm's way at this very moment in service of our country. A moment of silence, please. Thank you, and may God bless America. I would like to spend a moment now talking about the voting process. Felicia Hoffman, our town clerk, has worked very hard with Turn-In Technology to organize the distribution of response cards that you were issued as you entered the high school. When we have a vote, you will have 10 seconds to select key 1A for yes or key 2B for no. If your response card does not work during a vote, we ask that you please raise your hand and an attendant will assist you. You will be able to tell that your card is working because when you press your vote, there will be a green light flashing on your card, and that will indicate that your vote has been registered. If you want to vote more than once, only your last vote will count. So now we're going to test the response cards by considering the following statement. Tonight is a great night for a town meeting. If you are in favor of this statement, you may press 1 on your response card when I tell you to vote. If you are opposed, you should press 2 when I tell you to vote. And again, a small green light in the upper right corner will flash, indicating that your vote has been registered. So please vote on my signal. You may vote now. Okay. Did everybody see a green flashing light? If you didn't, please raise your hand. Okay, we have somebody in the back here who did not. Mr. Boudreau, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, great. Oh, is there another hand over here? Okay, there's one over here. Thank you. Oh, and we have one over here also. Andre, right here. Raise your, okay. Right here. Raise your hand again, please. There you go. Okay, got it, Chris? Okay, are we all set now? Oh, almost. Okay, thank you. Before we move to the main article tonight, it is customary to recognize the chair of the warrant committee for a motion governing the conduct of the meeting. I call upon Mr. Weiss, chair of the warrant committee, to make this customary motion.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the following rule be adopted for the conduct of this meeting. Any amendment to a main motion that would increase an appropriation must contain a provision for the source of funds for the increase, such that the total amount to be raised and appropriated at the meeting will not be increased.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Azevedo. So a motion has been made that if anybody makes an amendment to the motion that would increase expenditures, they have to identify the source of the expenditures. Is there any discussion on this motion? Okay, hearing none, I'll move to a vote. Please press yes for one for yes or two for no on my signal. You may vote now. Okay, the motion carries. Okay, now we move to the main motion. Mr. Weiss.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town, 1, amend the zoning map by adding the MBTA Communities Multifamily Overlay District, consisting of 9.957 acres on Tisdale Drive, also known as County Cork, Assessor's Map 25, Parcel 6, comprised of 56 individual parcels, and as shown on a map on file with the Office of the Town Clerk. And 2, amend its zoning bylaw by adding a new section 185-50 by right MBTA Communities Multifamily Overlay District, as shown in the document on file with the Office of the Town Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. I'll hear a second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Azevedo. Okay, any discussion on this motion? I will now turn the meeting over to Carol Lisbon, the chair of the planning board. Thank you, Ms. Lisbon.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you all for coming so quickly. This could be a record. As a special town meeting with only one article, I would like to just briefly explain the long and winding road that got us here tonight. The MBTA Communities Act was enacted almost 5 years ago and signed into law in 2021 by Governor Charlie Baker. It requires 177 cities and towns, including Dover, to enact a zoning bylaw to meet the terms of the act. At the outset, the state set out a multi-step process for towns to comply with the law. It also included specific numerical requirements and zoning specifications. For Dover, it means obtaining compliance with the Act by December 31st, 2025. As part of the process, the Planning Board went before the Board of Selectmen on March 3rd, 2022 and January 20th, 2023 to review the necessary paperwork that the Planning Board was required to submit to the state in order to follow the roadmap and the law. At both occasions, the Board of Selectmen supported the Planning Board continuing its efforts to follow the law and bring a proposed zoning amendment and proposed overlay district to town meeting, where residents would have the opportunity to vote on both, which you will do tonight. During the past 3.5 years, the Planning Board and Board of Selectmen have worked closely with legal counsel and our technical consultant to work through the multifaceted, prescriptive, and complex process and law. Also during this time, many of the early questions about the law have been answered, the legal environment has been clarified, and the financial risks to the town have been quantified. The Planning Board has statutory responsibility to develop zoning bylaws to be presented at town meeting. As executives of the town, the Board of Selectmen is responsible for all legal matters and the general financial management of the town. So, during tonight's presentation, you'll hear about the process and bylaw specifics from Jody Hsu, the Planning Board co-chair and MBTA project leader, from Melissa Santucci-Rosie, our town planner, and the financial and legal aspect landscape from Robin Hunter, Chair of the Board of Selectmen. Given the highly prescriptive nature of the act, the panel will also include Dover's legal counsel, Nina Pickering Cook. Before turning this over to Jody, and in order to adhere to the requirements of Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 5, I will read the following report of the Planning Board. Filing background. On July 15, 2025, the Planning Board submitted the above-referenced zoning amendment for inclusion on the warrant for the September 29, 2025 special town meeting. The Planning Board public hearing was opened, conducted, and closed on September 8, 2025. On September 10, 2025, revision number 1 was filed with the Board of Selectmen and Town Clerk. The revised version of the zoning bylaw and map the Planning Board puts forward to town meeting for a vote at the special town meeting is officially on file as of September 10th, 2025. Planning Board recommendation. The Planning Board makes a favorable recommendation to town meeting on proposed zoning bylaw and zoning map amendment for the MBTA Communities Act that includes a new section, Chapter 185-50, by right MBTA Communities Multifamily Overlay District, and the creation of new MBTA Communities Multifamily Zoning Overlay District with the revisions discussed this evening as outlined in the Town Planner's Memorandum dated September 3rd, 2025. And with that, I will turn this over to Jody Shue.
Carol. Thank you all for being here and for your attention to this important matter. Our agenda tonight is as follows. I'm going to start with a brief overview of some key facts about the MBTA Communities Act and give you a snapshot overview of what's happening around the Commonwealth with respect to that act. Then I'll hand it over to Robin, who will walk us through the legal and financial considerations that are important that we all understand this evening. I'll take it over again and walk you through our planning over this last 2.5 to 3 years and give you an overview of the community engagement process that we underwent. Hand off to Melissa on my right to walk you specifically through the proposed overlay district and the zoning bylaw that we are proposing here tonight. And then I'll bring it back to just give you an understanding of the voting implications for tonight, what your yes vote or your no vote means. And then we'll have an opportunity for questions and comments from the audience. Next slide, please. So let's get started with some baseline facts about this law. The MBTA Communities Act was passed by the Charlie Baker administration in 2021. It applies, as you might know, to 177 communities across the Commonwealth. And it requires that those communities create zoning that allows by right multifamily housing near transit. Notably, the law affirms local control of that zoning. So all boards, committees, and commissions in Dover maintain regulatory control on any potential future development in that one overlay district that we're discussing. The compliance deadline for Dover and other small adjacent towns is December 31st of this year. Thus our meeting tonight. Next slide, please. And here's a quick snapshot from across the Commonwealth. At present, 116 communities are compliant or conditionally compliant. Dover is one of 19 small adjacent towns that are working to comply with the law by December 31st. So there is a flurry of town meetings in small adjacent towns this fall. 15 communities are currently non-compliant, and many of those working towards compliance. And 27 have adopted or submitted for review. So there's a variety, but the majority here are very close and on the path. I'd like to hand it off to Robin to talk to you about the legal and fiscal considerations here tonight.
Thank you, Jody. So this evening, I would like to
Robin,
remind...
you're going to have to get closer to the mic.
Okay. So this evening, I would like to remind everyone what we're voting for. 3A, or the MBTA Communities Act, is the law, and it would be extremely costly for us to fight it. A no vote does not repeal the law. Our town, like all other towns, cannot opt out. So again, a no vote does not allow us to opt out. We are still required to be compliant with the law. If we decide to vote no, and thus do not comply with the law, what it means for us is we will lose the ability to apply for state grants, and that will automatically translate to higher taxes for all of us. Next slide, please. So let me put this into perspective. On average, the town of Dover applies for and receives approximately $1.3 million per year in grants. This number was derived by looking back historically over the last 5 years at the grants we received from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and taking an average. Some years we apply for and receive $250,000, while in other years we can receive well over $2 million. Also at stake here is $13 million that we received an earmark for the Center Street Bridge. That bridge has structural issues and needs to be replaced. If we lose the grant by voting no, we will need to repair the bridge, and the taxpayers will have to come up with the $13 million to fund it. What's more is not only do you lose the grants, if you become compliant in the future, our grants will no longer be prioritized by the state. So we will be put at the bottom of the list. So let me put this into perspective with respect to what this means to a taxpayer in Dover with a median value house of $1.6 million. The loss of grants of $1.3 million will add approximately $600 per year to each of your tax bills. If we were to lose funding for the $13 million grant, that would be, on average, over the next 20 years, an additional $425 per household on your tax bill. And keep in mind that these calculations were made based on today's tax rate. So this number will vary and will most likely increase. In addition to that, the state has said that this is a law. It's been challenged. It's gone to the Supreme Court, who has confirmed that the state can apply this law to all communities. And those communities fighting it have spent close to $1 million. Again, a bill each of us will need to fund. So basically, a no vote will result in higher taxes and less services, because we will need to balance the increase in taxes with the services that we provide to the town. Somebody asked the question, well, what do you have to lose by voting yes? And we thought that that was a pretty good question to ask. Well, really nothing from our perspective. Compliance will allow us to continue to receive grant fundings. And given that we have approximately $15 million in capital that needs to be replaced over the next 15 years, over the next 5 years, that's going to be very helpful to us. And on the flip side, once again, non-compliance is just going to result in higher taxes and costly litigation, as well as fewer services. So non-compliance, from our perspective, creates risk without rewards. And I'm going to turn it back over to,
Thanks, Robin. Okay, so you've heard some of the financial and legal realities associated with this law. I'd like to walk you through some clarification about what the law does do. So, to be very clear, the law does require Dover to zone for, by right, multifamily housing in one location in town. In other words, to create an overlay district. It does allow Dover residents to decide where to locate that one overlay district. And that's what we're going to be voting on tonight. It also allows Dover to write a zoning bylaw that respects our rural character and regulates development within that one overlay district. And we'll also be voting on that tonight. And importantly, it maintains Dover's local regulatory oversight of any potential future multifamily development within that one overlay district. Things like septic, water, wetlands, and all of those other issues. Next slide, please. But the MBTA Communities Act does not require the construction of multifamily housing. It does not remove our local regulatory oversight, as I said. It does not remove or change the underlying zoning in the area that we are proposing to place an overlay district. So the existing underlying zoning is maintained. It very notably does not force property owners in the proposed overlay district to sell, to build, or to take any action at all. And it does not require the town to design, pay for, or provide any new infrastructure to support any potential future development in that overlay district. We'll have time to answer questions at the end of this presentation, but now I want to move to the broad strokes of what Dover actually needs to do specifically to be compliant with this act. Next slide, please. So we have to do basically 4 things. We have to update our zoning map to create this overlay district for by right multifamily housing. And we do this by selecting a proposed location, which we'll be talking about and Melissa will walk us through. We have to create a new bylaw section in our zoning bylaw where we are able to regulate development within that one overlay district. And we do this by drafting a bylaw, which we've been working on and you've had the opportunity to review, I hope, and we'll be voting on this evening. We have to vote at town meeting, and that's why we're all here. Tonight we're going to do it together. And then, assuming we pass it, which we hope you will agree with your vote, we will submit our bylaw and our overlay district to the state and come into compliance by the deadline of December 31st. Next slide, please. It's been mentioned before that this is a prescriptive process. It rests on a series of legal requirements, and we have to follow state guidelines with the bylaw we draft and the location we propose. So we're not making it up. Here are some of the elements that we've had to consider in the development of both the location and the bylaw that accompanies it. The minimum multifamily housing unit capacity in the district that we choose has to allow for a minimum of 102 units, which is a formula that the state defined based upon our total housing stock. We have to allow for an average minimum gross density in the zoned area of 15 units per acre. We have no size requirement other than that the 102 unit minimum has to fit in a 15 units per acre zone. So that kind of helps us get to a size requirement. So it gave us a sense for how to pick a size big enough that would allow for that. But there are no location requirements in Dover. And of course, we have to comply by December 31st. Next slide, please. So as Carol mentioned, this has been a really enormous multi-year initiative for the planning board. And we began the process starting to think about how are we going to go about doing this and what should guide our thinking. And A phrase that we repeated over and over in all of our meetings and in all of our work was that we knew that we wanted to be as compliant as we needed to be here in Dover, because we're going to follow the law, and as respectful of Dover's rural character as we could be. And we really took that to heart throughout all of the work that we undertook. So we've been working really diligently on this since 2023 to get to where we are tonight, presenting our recommendation to all of you and asking for your vote to adopt these changes. And I'd like to tell you how we got here. What process did we follow to ensure that Dover residents would have a voice in the identification of a location for that overlay district and in the review of information and materials to help you all make the best choice possible tonight? It's been an exhaustive endeavor, and I'm going to try to condense it down into just a few slides. But really, at the end of the day, we followed a 4-step process. Next slide, please. It began with site selection. How would we think about where to place an overlay district? And so we decided to establish a framework to guide our thinking and to identifying initial locations for consideration. We agreed that we would identify a single area in town where compliance could be met. We would look at a location or locations where pre-existing development existed, as many other towns across the Commonwealth have done, including communities like Foxborough and Dedham and many of our neighbors. We would explore undeveloped property as well. We would factor in proximity to town services as an element for consideration, and we would consider state compliance criteria very carefully, because there's no point in going through all this work if we couldn't comply in the district. We understood that we would have to evaluate any proposed location against those state compliance criteria, and that would require that we had to start with some dimensional guidelines, because that's kind of how you do it. You have to back into the compliance criteria. And that would help us with the evaluation of location. Dimensional guidelines, as you might know, are things like building heights, setbacks, lot coverage. Good news. Our crackerjack technical consultant reminded us that we already have a multifamily bylaw in Dover. It was adopted at town meeting in 1990, but it's not MBTA compliant. Our technical consultant who worked with us on this initial work suggested to us that we begin by modeling dimensional requirements after those that were already approved in a bylaw that's currently on our books. So we did that. We took those dimensional requirements and used them as a starting point for developing a new bylaw. Next slide, please. And then we were able to put some meat on the bone. Of the 5 locations that were originally identified, you can see them here on the far left. When our consultant entered those locations and the preliminary dimensional requirements dimensional standards, into the state's mandatory compliance model, here's what we learned. 2 of the 5 locations we had originally identified were knocked out of consideration. 3 remained. Next slide, please. And once we had some options on the table, we began a very, very comprehensive community outreach initiative in the early spring of 2024. It is arguably the most comprehensive communications campaign that I can remember on my 9 years on the planning board, and maybe some of you will agree. In the early spring, we created an MBTA Communities Act website, which I hope you have had the chance to review. We've been updating it regularly since it was created, and as new information has been made available to us, and as we've communicated out to all of you. In 2025, we began our outreach with different groups in town. We met with the Council on Aging. We sent certified notices to owners and abutters of the 3 potential overlay districts in order to ensure that we would have the opportunity to hear from them if they so chose. We hosted a public information session in March of 2025. 85 attendees participated on Zoom. We created, with our technical consultant, a community survey to solicit feedback, comments, and your preferences. We had 180 respondents to that survey. And then we held a second public information session in April. 25 individuals attended that one. Throughout the spring and summer, we've been making updates to the MBTA website page. We were included in newsletter blasts from the Council on Aging, Parks and Rec, the library. We had a public hearing in September that 69 individuals attended. And then we mailed an executive summary overviewing this effort to every household in Dover in early September. Oh, Carol's pointing out that I forgot one. We held a specific session in August for residents, owners, and tenants at County Court, which is the site of the proposed overlay district. And you might have seen Melissa and Carol at Dover Days trying to make ourselves available to answer questions and hear from you, your thoughts. So it's been a really robust effort, and I hope that you heard from us in some way at some point along the line. Next slide, please. One of the things that was really fantastic for us in this effort was the work of our town communications staff. We have a variety of channels that we were able to utilize, including updates on the town's main page, in addition, of course, to the MBTA page, the town's Facebook page, which has 995 followers. We utilize that 14 times to promote this initiative. We have digital newsletter that goes out from the town to 769 subscribers. And if you're not subscribed, I urge you to sign up for that. It's called Our Town, and we had 10 mentions. We wrote blurbs about this initiative and what was happening in the planning board on this. I hope that you saw that. We also do news and alerts that go out to 759 subscribers. And we also have a Dover MA Facebook page, which is not the town page, but really duplicates posts from the official town page that reaches 1,267 followers. So it's been a really big effort, and I thank our town communications staff who's done a fantastic job for us, really firing on all cylinders to do the best we could do to get the word out to all of you. Next slide, please. I mentioned a community survey. We worked with our technical consultant from a firm called Horsley Witten to develop and share a survey through all of those different channels I mentioned that asked folks a variety of questions related to the compliance effort with the MBTA Communities Act. We had 180 respondents to that survey, which I'm told is a really great result for a survey like this. The last time I think we did it was around village visioning. You might recall, some of you, a few years back, and we had a similar number of respondents. The survey was available for a 2-month period in March and April of 2025. It was posted on the website, circulated in all those ways that I reviewed, and as I said, we had 180 respondents. When we asked the question, rank the 3 potential locations in accordance with your input. Number 1 being you think it's the most appropriate. Number 3 being you think it's the least appropriate. County Court really was quite far and away the leader. So that was a really great indicator for us as we thought about the various options. Next slide, please. Meanwhile, we were also working really hard to connect with our town leadership from across our boards, commissions, and committees, trying to help them understand what was at stake with compliance here and what we were proposing so that they could help us move towards a solution that would be supported throughout the townhouse, and across town with residents. We really wanted to make sure that boards, committees, and commissions understood the importance of state grants to support their own goals and objectives. And as you can see here, we have support from all of these boards that you see on this slide who have reviewed this information, and we held a meeting with all town committees, boards, and commissions in mid-August, and have heard from all of them since with recognition of their support of this endeavor and the proposed location in the bylaw that we are proposing. So now I want to hand it back to our amazing town planner, Melissa, to walk us through some specifics about the proposed overlay district and the draft of the bylaw.
Thank you, Jody, and good evening, everyone. So we're going to get into a little more technical matter now that we've heard about sort of the process and how we've arrived at where we are this evening. So what we have in front of us is an aerial photo, and we have County Court, Tisdale Drive, highlighted in blue. This particular tract of land is about 10 acres, and it's comprised of 56 assessors parcels, which each one goes along with a condominium unit. Part of approving the local zoning in accordance with the MBTA communities is designating an overlay district. And this is the location that the town of Dover has arrived at. Jody had talked a little bit about the survey. We also had some live polling that we conducted and some additional questions that were in the survey. And every single one of those tools that we use to gather data from the community, County Court was the top selection. I would say it was favored most based on the questions and supported most in the materials that we gathered from the residents here in Dover. Next slide, please. We did want to provide a little bit of clarification. We've heard from some of the residents here and some questions on some of the community meetings and informational sessions that we've hosted over the summer. A lot of questions about Tisdale too. We want to make it clear to everybody this evening and to the community that the land showed highlighted in yellow on this slide is not part of the MBTA Communities Overlay District. It has absolutely nothing to do with what we're talking about this evening. There is a pending development on that particular property, and what we're talking about tonight in the MBTA Communities Act has absolutely nothing to do with that pending 40B. So just for clarification and just to make it very clear on what we're actually looking at for the overlay district. Next slide, please. So here we're going to cover how the town arrived at the proposed language that we're going to be considering this evening. So one of the first things the town did was they consulted with people that have professional expertise in the MBTA Communities Act. Horsley Witten was our technical assistants, partners who have worked in a variety of communities on MBTA issues and are zoning professionals. Town planner, previous town planner, and myself included, and also our legal counsel, Nina Pickering-Cook from Anderson and Krieger. So these folks and groups have been involved with MBTA since it's been on the books in this community and other communities and work that they do. The second thing that we did here in Dover was we said, how are similar uses treated in Dover currently? And that's where we found section 185-42. This has been on the zoning books here in Dover since 1990. This was analyzed, and portions of that text were used in the text of the zoning bylaw that we're asked to vote on this evening. There were some things in that particular bylaw that conflicted with the MBTA Act, things like specifying certain populations, the size of units, and different things like that. Prescribed in MBTA, those types of things are not permitted. So the things that worked that are on the books now were used in the overlay district, and the things that didn't were left out. In addition to that, we learned from our peer communities. There are over 100 examples of language that have been deemed appropriate by the state, and surrounding communities were looked at by the consultant and also the planning board. What are our peers doing? What does their language look like? Is there things that they're doing that would work and make sense here in Dover? And then the final thing is part of the drafting policy was the town of Dover took advantage of the pre-adoption agency review. So the town submitted to both state agencies that would be tasked with reviewing and approving our bylaw. The first one was the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. That's a pretty long name. That is the state wing that is tasked with MBTA compliance. And the second entity that we had pre-adoption review was the Attorney General. And the Attorney General looks at all our zoning bylaws and changes here in Dover. So we vetted those drafts with them. We received some very minor comments, and what that allowed us to do was to address those prior to coming to town meeting. So there's a confidence level with the location and the text because it has been reviewed by the state agencies that would be looking at those post-adoption by the town of Dover. Next slide, please. This particular slide is what we refer to as a dimensional criteria. And zoning, when we talk about any type of use or a specific district, we say, or we ask ourselves, where do we want it to be located on the lot? How tall do we want it to be? How separated do we want those buildings to be? And this is what is reflected in this table here. We specify the size of the lot at 20,000 square feet. We specify the frontage at 100 feet. The height, which is 2.5 stories, no different than the R1 zone, the R2 zone, so similar to the height requirements in our single family districts. The maximum lot coverage of 25% is the same in our multifamily overlay district now. We have a separation of buildings of 32 feet, so we want to make sure that any buildings that do come forward in the future have proper separation for the residents, for light, for air, for landscaping, so that the buildings aren't on top of each other. And then we have some pretty decent setbacks of 50 feet from all of the property lines, including the rear, the side, and the front. And some of those mirror some of our residential districts, some being a little bit less and some being a little bit more. And then one of the main items in the dimensional criteria that is important to note is the density. So Jody had spoke earlier about the minimum density that the state would allow in any district is 15 units per acre. And how you test how your density works or how it doesn't work is you input all of this data that I just spoke about into the compliance model, and it does what it does, and then it tells you this district works or this district does not work. So the lowest possible density that we could enter into that model to get the model to work would be 16 units per acre. So that's another level of insurance and a safeguard on density as we put forward this bylaw here this evening. Next slide, please. I'm just going to go over some highlights that are in the text of the bylaw. I'm sure that you folks have had a chance to take a look at that. Not a great read, but definitely worth looking at. So the bylaw, again, it's one district. The town of Dover has said we want to pick one specific location where we are going to allow by right multifamily housing. This isn't a situation where it's all over the community or where somebody can propose something like this outside of the overlay district. So again, back to Jody's point, that's where the local control remains. As I spoke of earlier, we establish a maximum density of 16 units per acre. So again, some safeguards and some understanding of if and when a development does come forward, what is it going to entail? The bylaw requires site plan review for any proposed housing development. Site plan review is a very commonly used process throughout Massachusetts and including in Dover here. And what that allows the planning board to do is look at landscaping, parking, traffic, access, site design, lighting, all of the components that pretty much make up any type of development. The planning board has jurisdiction and authority over those specific aspects of the development. We also included some definitions, so there's some terms in the bylaw that are not defined elsewhere and have been introduced in this specific section. There's only a handful of them, so we do include some definitions. And then one of the other main components is the parking requirements, which allow the planning board to take into consideration guest parking with 2 to 2.5 spaces per unit. And I am going to turn it back over to Jody. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. So where are we here tonight? And what does your vote mean? A yes vote means that you support this article, and if it passes, the new zoning bylaw, 185, chapter 18550 of the Dover zoning bylaw, and the overlay district map would be enacted in Dover. We would become compliant with the law, our access to grant funding would be maintained, and legal peril associated with non-compliance avoided. A no vote and a non-passage, if the article fails tonight, we will not be in compliance with the law. Our access to state grant funding will be denied, we'll be in legal jeopardy, and ultimately, we'll be back because the planning board will need to resume our efforts to bring this proposed zoning district, overlay district, and a bylaw back to another special town meeting. It doesn't negate our responsibility to follow the law, so you can expect to hear from us again if, God forbid, we go that route. So, next slide, please. The planning board urges your support with a yes vote. And in summary, I really hope that this presentation has been clear and informative for all of you. We look forward to your questions or your comments, and we urge a yes vote tonight.
Okay, thank you. Again, a reminder, we have microphones up front if you have any comments or you wish to speak on behalf or opposed, or if you have questions, or if you want to move the question, feel free to come on up. Wow. I think this is the first time in my 40 years. Oh, we do have one person. Okay. Yes, sir. Name and address, please.
Hi, Jim. John, it's not on.
Is that no? Is this microphone not on? I'm trying to switch on.
Jim, John Jeffries, Meeting House Hill.
Yes, sir.
Through you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to turn my back on you, Carol, just for 1 second. Thank you all for being here. John Jeffries, Meeting House Hill. 2 things. One, just to fill in a couple of gaps. As Carol mentioned, when this measure came to the Board of Selectmen voted twice. Neither vote was unanimous. Let me tell you why. When it first came, Robin was part of the committee that really brought the planning board together, voted in favor of it. Bob Springett voted against it. He was vehemently against it. That evening I was in the middle, the 3rd member of the Board of Selectmen. I asked Carol if we could postpone this, let me take it under advisement. I was against it vehemently as Bob that night. And let me tell you why I voted for it that night. And again, as Carol mentioned earlier, we voted for it twice. Neither time were unanimous. First and foremost, you always have the decision. This decision is your decision. It's not the planning board and it's not the Board of Selectmen. You can vote no and you can afford it. The town has a very significant cash reserve. You can afford it. Why I voted in favor of it is, as Carol mentioned, they will be back. And as Robin mentioned, it's in your financial best interest to vote for this because most of you can't afford a raise in your property taxes. Many of you can, and the ones that you can and the ones that will vote this in your conscience against it, please feel free to do it. I was thinking of many of the people who can't afford to have their taxes increased. I was against it then, I'm against it now, and I'm probably going to vote in favor of it. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. Please hold your applause until the meeting's over. Thank you. Any other comments before we move to a vote? Okay, well, I guess we're ready to move to a vote then. If you're in favor, oh wait, yes ma'am?
Hi, I'm sorry, we just moved to Tisdale Drive.
Ma'am, could you state your name and address, please?
Yes, Elena Nalitova, and we moved to Tisdale Drive. It's the district that you discussed today. And maybe we are late, we maybe didn't know a lot of information, but can you please tell us in details what is for the people who live in this address? What does it mean? What is the best scenario, worst scenario? How it will affect exactly the people who live in 56 units in this address?
Okay, thank you. I'll turn it over to Nina Pickering Cook, our town council.
Hi there, how are you? The answer is the people that live in Tisdale Drive and in County Court will have an option, an additional option on how their property can be developed, right? So right now, the property within County Court is under a certain type of zoning regime. This just gives you another option on top of that in order to develop your property. Now, the wrinkle here is that most of the property, if not all the property within County Court, is within a condominium development. So it is very difficult for one unit owner to do any development by themselves. But the voting of zoning here does not mean the owners within County Court have to do anything at all. It doesn't mean you have to sell your property. It doesn't mean you have to develop your property. It just gives an additional option for development for the entire parcel if everyone decided to sell. I hope that helps.
Could you go to the microphone again, ma'am? I'm sorry. Or we could bring a microphone down to you.
You required 107 units, right? But there is only 56.
No, so if what the zoning does is lays out the possible development within the whole area. It doesn't require any number of units. So all it says is this is if the entire parcel, if all 56 parcels were bought and were able to be developed, if we pass this zoning amendment, then they could be developed under the dimensional requirements that Melissa laid out. And they could do less than that, but they can't do more than the dimensional requirements allow. So it has nothing to do, any development has nothing to do with the existing units that are there now.
So in the best scenario, we just will have the different name of the zone. In the worst scenario, in several years, somebody will push us to develop more units on this area, just because law or something.
I'm not going to characterize either as best or worst. I would say that there is a possibility that the zoning changes and nothing results as far as a change at Tisdale Drive. However, if every single unit owner decided to sell and have their property, to sell their property, then they could do that in the entire parcel could be developed differently. It is no different than if today someone could come in and buy county court, all the units within county court if they wanted to, and if you wanted to sell. This law doesn't change that at all. It doesn't change your rights as a property owner. It simply changes what the developer can put there after they buy the property.
But nothing can push us
Correct.
to make this decision.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments before we move to a vote? Sir, name and address, please.
David Perez, 20 Pine Street. So, two questions. As I understand it, there was a change made to increase from 15 to 16 units per acre, and that gives us, it says 157, so I take it the parcel is a little less than 10. And we're required to build 100 or to zone for 102 acres. So why are we zoning for 50% more than the law requires? Because nobody has articulated a reason why, from a public policy perspective, this is good for Dover. All we've heard is a lot of sometimes hyperbolic messaging about all the bad things that will happen to us if we do this. And it seems to me like, okay, if that's the reason, as Mr. Jeffrey said, because it's going to cost us more money and aggravation fighting with the state, why are we doing more than we have to?
Okay, Melissa? Yes.
I can take that question. Thank you for the question. The particular parcel that the town has put forward is 10 acres. There was no cap at all on the density up until probably 2 months ago. So all of the information that the planning board was relaying to the public carried a number of 227, and that was actually on the slide. If we could put up slide, the one, hold on, I know, but still, yeah, what slide is that? Step 3.
16.
Slide 16, please. So if we could, slide 16, please. Awesome. So this is all of the information in the top row that the town shared at their information sessions. And it was the 227 number. So that is what was put forward to the community, and we were actually at 22.8 units per acre. I, in full transparency, started working for the town in July and brought some ideas and knowledge to Dover and recommended that we drop the density to the lowest possible units per acre so that we could comply with the model and the district would be compliant. And that's exactly what we did. As I had noted earlier in my presentation, 15 units per acre didn't work in the model. The model does some adjusting that, frankly, I'm not aware of what it does behind the scenes. And the next number after 15, 16, we put 16 in and 16 worked. So we went from 22.8 units per acre down to 16 with a modeled capacity of 227 to 159. Just substantial reduction in our opinion. Thank you.
And
To clarify one thing, just so folks know, when Melissa mentions the model, the State Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, which determines compliance, literally has a computer model that they type all of the parameters of the town's proposed bylaw into, and it spits out an answer as to whether it's compliant with the law or not. One of the ways of determining compliance is the minimum density. It cannot be below 15. So to answer your question very directly, the dimensional requirements are as low as possible in order to be compliant with the state model.
got it. So when you were running the algorithm, did you say, okay, let's put 8 acres here and see what happens? Or did you already determine that you were using the 10 acre of the overlay?
I can take that. Given that it is a condominium form of ownership there, with the 56 units that the previous spoker had spoke to, all of the common area is held by the condo association, and we didn't feel like breaking something like that up would really make sense.
Got it. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate that. Well, I had one more question.
Well, how much time do we have? What? In 1 minute, sir. Go ahead.
Great. So on August 18th, the planning board availed itself of a provision of the MBTA Communities Act to basically change the vote in this town meeting from 2/3 to 50% based on a finding that this parcel was an eligible parcel. And I'm just curious what the criteria were that the planning board considered for making that determination before it disenfranchised a sixth of town meeting.
Let me turn that over.
Thank you.
Let me turn that over to town council, sir. Go ahead, Nina.
Just to clarify, I can't answer your question because the premise of the question is incorrect. The planning board did not change its voting quantum, the voting quantum of this vote in August. The voting quantum of this was set by state law, provided that the proposal be compliant with MBTA zoning, then you get the majority vote. You get the benefit of the majority vote at town meeting instead of 2/3. The change that was made in the dwelling units per acre, that was a compliant option as well. So that was also under a majority vote quantum.
Sorry, council. The statute says that unless we're in a community within 0.5 miles of an MBTA station, that the planning board needs to make a determination that this is an eligible parcel for purposes of this vote.
Correct.
Okay, go ahead, Nina. Microphone.
That is correct, and they did so.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any other questions or comments? Okay, let's move to a vote then. If we could have, I'm sorry? Is somebody up there? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much. Nicholas Hawks, Burnham Road. I've seen a lot of slides tonight. I've heard from several different people. What I haven't heard was anything about the impact of adding 102 families to Dover and the impact it's going to have on our schools, which are already strained. We have a Chickering Elementary School with 450 students in it. And if we add another 2 to 3 students per unit into Chickering, we're going to basically add 50% more students. I haven't heard any consideration of what the economic cost to increasing the academic or educational infrastructure is. We're talking about how much, a couple $100 more if we're not in compliance with this law. Our property taxes are going to go up. How much is the property tax going to go up if they have to build out a larger school, or they have to add more to the middle school to deal with this overflow of new students? What about the strain on our water in the town, or the traffic jams in the town center that we all see every day when we drive through? Has there been any consideration done to the infrastructure costs of adding 102 units at all? Or I know you talk about you want to maintain the Dover rural community, but we're going to get 2.5 stories, 102 units, maybe more, a developer's bonanza to redevelop this area, bring in as many families as possible. And you don't have a single slide or economic cost about that. So after this slideshow, I'm a no, and I urge this community to join Marshfield, Milton, Marblehead, and many other towns and reject this unfunded mandate. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Havland, from the Board of Selectmen, you would like to answer that question?
Is that on? Can you hear me?
Speak a little closer.
I will speak to you from a member of the Dover School Committee in Dover, the Chickering Building Committee. That school was built to handle at least 150 more students than it is right now. So that should not be a worry for anyone in this room whatsoever. But on a practical level, you're assuming that 102 units are going to be built. There's already 56 there, and those are all going to have to be purchased, torn down, and then rebuilt. The chances, if you do any kind of economic analysis, the chances of that happening appear to be very remote. So please don't get worked up on what might happen. Please don't get worked up on possibilities of the future, because those fears are just unfounded. And what we do know, however, is that on the other side of this coin, there are known significant ramifications to the taxpayers. And if you vote no tonight, please remember over the next 5+ town meetings, when we come to you with very large budget increases, that you're causing it tonight. This is something where practically voting yes is going to have no effect on this town. Zero. Voting no is going to have a major economic impact in the tens of millions of dollars. And that's not something we shrivel out.
Please hold your audience. Please hold your applause. If I could also now turn it over to the town council, Nina Pickering Cook. She wants to respond to part of the question.
Yeah, beyond the practicalities that Mr. Havlin mentioned, the reason there was no slide about the impact of school children specifically is that consideration is illegal under U.S. constitutional and Massachusetts constitutional law to consider when zoning for property.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. Ma'am, did you want to have a question, or maybe try the other one?
Just stand close.
Jeez. Can I have somebody down here to fix the microphone?
Maggie Sharon. Okay. Maggie Sharon, 18 Tisdale Drive. And I'm speaking as a former member of the school committee for the region, also as a member and an owner of a piece of property in the zone that we're discussing tonight. And I just want to say first that I very much appreciate the zoning board's outreach that was shared on the slides earlier tonight to the town and then also to the residents of Tisdale. I took advantage of many of those opportunities to watch and listen, and I entered the conversation very skeptical of the overlay district coming to Tisdale Drive. I feel as a member of the community that has the most modest property in this community, I was initially very reticent and uncomfortable with using our neighborhood as the overlay district. That said, I did the research, I paid attention to the proposals, and the reality, which maybe they can't say, but the only way to change the property that's on there now from the 56 units, which Mr. Haviland explained, it's not 102 plus, it's 56 minus plus 100, is if a developer comes with such a juicy offer that all 56 residents and homeowners of our community wants to sell their property to the developer. And I don't think it's that likely, because you're talking about nobody will sell their condo if it's less than $1 million, probably more. And as I mean, the reality of that is very unlikely. And maybe it's worth it to all of you to take this risk, but for me, as a steward of our collective neighborhood, I don't think the risk is that high, and I think that there's some value in compliance. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sharon. Okay, anybody else? I think we're ready to vote. Could we have a copy of the bylaw up for people to look at? I'm sorry. All right, somebody up.
Martha Boland, 9 Partridge Hill Road. I often get asked what the impact of the zoning is going to have on the existing property, the property values of Tisdale and the surrounding homes. And I was just wondering, how do I answer people? Have any studies been done in any of the other towns that have accepted this? So it's basically a question about how it impacts the property values.
Thank you, ma'am. Carol?
So we are not aware of any studies that have been done, and we've checked with our new town planner as well, and she is not aware either. I would say, building upon what Maggie just mentioned, that if a developer was really interested in taking a 10-acre property that's already developed and finding a way to make money by buying 56 units, tearing them down, rebuilding, finding water, finding septic, that the property value actually might go up.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right, I don't see, oh, there's a hand up there. Can you come down, or do you want the microphone up there, ma'am?
Hi, I'm Janice Abramovitz, and I'm on Tisdale Drive. There's a point I just want some clarification. So there's the $13 million amount of money that's slated to repair Center Street. My one question, is Dover 100% responsible for the fix of Center Street, or doesn't Needham have some responsibility for that as well? I'm sorry, yeah.
At the risk of answering this question incorrectly, I am going to ask the head of the highway department.
Okay.
Director.
Speak closer.
Kevin McCabe, Director of Public Works. We would be half on the hook, so that project, the cost of that would be split with the town of Needham. The federal earmark that we already received, which is covering 100% of the design engineering, that was named to the town of Dover. So I don't know how that would implicate it. I don't know if we would lose that money. But as far as the funding for the STIP, which is the State Transportation Improvement Program, we would be half on the hook with Needham.
Any other questions?
So what happens if Needham decides that they don't want to go with an MBTA overlay committee?
They've
How
already
does that
complied, ma'am.
Oh, they have? Okay.
They've already complied. Any other questions or comments?
Hi, Kevin Van, Southern Pleasant. I'd like to move the question.
A motion has been made to move the question. Do I hear a second? Any, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we'll move directly now to a vote on the main article. There's the motion up there. If you're in favor of the article, in favor of creating the overlay district, you will press 1 for yes. If you're opposed, you'll press 2 for no. You may vote on my signal. You may vote now. Motion carries 250 to 29. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn. Do I hear a second? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.